We're living in a digital world, but only 0.3% of professionals know how to program, how to code. How can we keep going with only 0.3% doing the development work to create everything that the other 99.7% of professionals who need to use in their work? Recently, a group of companies has started to challenge this status quo. These companies are building what have become known as no-code solutions or no-code tools that allow non-technical people to create digital products. In this series of videos, we're going to talk to some of the people behind these companies. These are some of the movers and the shakers that are helping to push forward the no-code movement. Hi, everybody. Today we have with us here David Siegel. He's one of the founders and CEO at Glide. And we're going to talk about a bit of the history of the company, how you guys got where you are now, and what motivated you to get onto this path. So, David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here and to talk about Glide.
So I guess we should start from the very beginning.
Okay.
What gave you the idea to create a no-code tool, and why did you choose to create specifically what Glide has become?
Sure. So there are a lot of influences that went into Glide and a lot of reasons that came together to create it. But I think the most relevant background for me and the rest of the team is we're actually, we've spent the last decade or so creating software development tools for developers. And I have a background in software engineering, and I like creating websites and apps, and it's just a really sort of fun, creative way to express your ideas. And I'd spent 10 years with my co-founders working on tools for building apps, building websites, technical tools. And I work on those things because I like creating software. And there's many aspects of creating software that I like. I like designing it. I like programming it. I think writing code is really interesting and it's captivating. And the general trajectory or trend of all of our work in developer tools was always to make developing better software easier for developers. And one of the most recent things we worked on, one of my co-founders, Mark, who's the CTO of Glide, he and I were working on this tool called QuickType. It's an open source tool that you can find at quicktype.io. I think any developer would be interested in it. QuickType we created to help developers write code automatically. And QuickType would analyze your data set and then would generate code in maybe 15 different programming languages now to load and transform and then write that data set in a type-safe way. It's very sophisticated. And we just had a lot of fun working on this project together, and we started brainstorming about how we could have more fun on a bigger project. And we said, okay, what are the next logical steps here? And the next step we took was, instead of analyzing data and generating code for a developer, let's analyze data and make a screen that the developer can just put in their app. And we did some prototypes, and it never really impressed us very much, the tool. And we showed it to our friends, and no one really understood it. It was too simple and limited for developers, and it was too technical for people who weren't developers. It was sort of in this no man's land. Mm. So we kept iterating on it, and we said, okay, when we show it to people who don't know how to code, they can't make any sense of it because the input is JSON data, which is this text data format, and it just looks like code. And in fact, we rendered it inside a code editor, so it was code.
Yeah.
So we changed that to be a Google Sheet. Okay, so now you pick a Google Sheet, and you're going to get this screen that looks like an app screen. What is this? Is this useful to people? And as soon as we started showing that to our non-technical friends, they got very excited. And they said things like, well, I have spreadsheets and I have a mobile phone, and so does my sports team, or so does my church. or so do the people at my office. And I'm always trying to like share this information with them. And I can never really share a spreadsheet with people who are using their phones or normal computers. It's just weird and clunky. But your tool is very interesting. It turns the data, the spreadsheets I already have, into this interactive sort of slick mobile experience, because it had like inertial scrolling. So you flick to scroll. You can't do that in a spreadsheet. It had search and just looked like an iPhone app. So we said, okay, well, this is, our friends like this, like, let's keep going in this direction. And so that was sort of how practically we made progress on the idea of Glide. More abstractly, Mark and my other co-founders and I, Jason, Antonio, we were just interested in this general set of problems that are required, the general set of problems you have to solve well to make good software. And I think one thing the whole no-code phenomenon gets a little bit wrong, even though overall it's great and it's heading in the right direction, is this focus on code. And code is just one part of software. The other aspects that we focus on are data, distribution, and design. So we have these sort of 4 pillars that we like to think about. It's data, distribution, design, and programming model, or programming. That's the code part. And I'm also a designer, and I've worked on software projects where like the design was the part that failed. Like we got the code, we distributed the app, we have data all set up, but like the design fell apart or never came together, and it was very disappointing to users. So as a group, we were just interested, like, how can we elevate software or the creation of software by really simplifying these 4 aspects of software creation: data, distribution, design, and programming. So for data, we said, okay, let's do spreadsheet. We talked to our friends, they all have data in spreadsheets. Okay, let's use a spreadsheet for data. For distribution, let's use the web. Let's not do app stores. Let's let people share their software like they share web pages. It's going to be really fast, and yeah, there's some limitations, but it's a good place to start, and we can iterate rapidly, learn really quickly, and everyone's familiar with using software over the web these days. For programming model, we also said let's learn from spreadsheets. Spreadsheets have 1 billion users. They're this sort of data-driven programming environment that like many people know. Let's not try to do something new here yet. Let's start with spreadsheets. And then for design, we said let's limit ourselves to mobile, which is sort of a constrained design surface. It's quite small. We can fit it on a laptop screen, and people are very familiar with the mobile apps they use every day, and they're happy to use conventions from the apps that they like. There's fewer conventions that are agreed upon for large screen software. Much more diversity there. It's harder to design it. So yeah, we said let's put all of these 4 areas together and make progress in all of them, and maybe we can create a method of creating and distributing great software that is just much easier than the way you do it today. And we didn't really have in mind, we never used the term no code, and we weren't really thinking about non-technical people. We just wanted to make something for everyone that would be easy. And whether you can program or not, you would use this system depending on, what you needed to do. Because, we have ideas for software all the time, but traditionally it just takes so long to design and build and distribute software that it just remains an idea and you don't do it. So we said, well, what if we have this platform that was like super fast? And because one of the last apps I made with code, I made an app called Confetti for tracking all of my friends' birthdays. And it would like remind me when their birthday was coming up so I could send them a gift. And I worked on that app for like 2 years. It was like way too long. That could just be a spreadsheet that you would make in 10 minutes. And I was like, yeah, I love if people could just have ideas like this and just get them out the door faster. So that all of those things sort of came together. It became this prototype that would turn spreadsheets into apps that you could share over the web. And then this whole no-code thing started heating up. I think, we've probably seen this trend before, but I think NOCODE was emerging again, having another season, and I think Glide differentiates itself by being so strong on mobile because of our the way we approach the design of mobile. It's not you don't do the mobile app as the sort of narrow version of your website. You start with the mobile app, and then we can go the other direction a little bit. So yeah, those are all the ideas behind Glide. And there's many more sort of specific technical ones about sort of functional or reactive programming models, programming with data in kind of a persistent way. In general, like a lot of the lessons we learned from spreadsheets. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to listen from you, because me and Mauricio, we came from a technical background. So we created digital products our whole life and worked for companies taking care of IT departments, dealing with digital products and this kind of things. I was a CIO before starting this endeavor with Mauricio right now. So, and I can see in your description that the real passion that you have is the passion to solve problems. At the end, that's the same motivation that I had when I started in the technical thing. I like to solve problems, and I like this feeling of being God, You face a problem and then you go and create a solution for that problem. So, yeah. And it seems to me that that's what is behind you. What makes Glide and what makes the passion that for this product and all these things, it's not the no-code, as you said. It's your passion to create solutions. As you already started with something, no code for coders, even being a coder. You like to code, but in reality, it's not coding. Coding is the process for solving problems. And that's it. I got it correctly, or there's something that I missed?
Yeah, that's mostly true, I would say. And sometimes I think I invent problems to solve them. I told this story. One of my origin stories of Glide is like I could never remember my mom's birthday. So I built an app to remember birthdays. It was too hard to build an app. So I built Glide to build the app to remember birthdays. And I could have just memorized the birthday. But I had to sort of I think this is how programmers work, is they think they see something and they see the pattern and they make an abstraction. And they say, well, I could build the machine that will solve the problem, but it would solve 1,000,000 problems just like it. And they keep sort of stepping back and back and back. So yeah, I graduated from making a single app to making the app that makes apps. But I will prevent myself from taking the step to make the no-code builder. I think that would be too far.
It's something that I think you're totally correct in saying that people that like to develop software, they kind of go out of their way to find problems that need solving, even some problems that don't really need solving.
Yeah.
I guess I could take your example. I once wrote a word processor, quite similar to Microsoft Word. I've been a writer for quite a while. I wrote 14 books, and it used to be that Microsoft gave you a license that allowed you to use the software at home if you had it at the office, and then they changed that. I went out to buy a license of Microsoft Word for myself, and I found out that it was almost as expensive as getting Microsoft Office. And that kind of seemed wrong to me, because it's like they're forcing me to take all this other software that I don't really need, because it just doesn't make sense to pay as much for one software as you'd pay for 4 different products. And so I said, I'm not going to buy this. And I went home and I started writing the word processor, which I guess it's pretty much what you're describing. Like, as a person that enjoys developing software, you see an opportunity in a problem, because that problem will allow you to go out and use your creativity to do something. And I guess that is a lot of what I see in what you're describing, to leaving out the no-code moniker, but all these tools that are more visually oriented, that allow you to create things through a simpler process.
Yeah.
I think that the really interesting side of it, and I think that it's really an interesting direction in which you're taking the tools, is that it empowers people that don't have this technical background to be as creative, to have this creative freedom, I would say.
Yeah.
Isn't that something that we have to look forward to in no-code development tools?
I mean, I think the more indifferent people creating software, the more we'll discover and innovate. So yeah, that's definitely one exciting consequence of a method of software creation that's just more broadly available. And yeah, I think we do have that to look forward to. We definitely see that with Glide. Most of our users are just first-time software creators. They're non-technical people. They just had some idea, and yeah, it's very upsetting to think that without a tool like Glide, they might never have been able to realize it. Maybe they would have spent a lot of money and hired a team of developers. Maybe they could finally do it. But I see something even more special, which is when the person who is the primary stakeholder, I mean, that's kind of a weird way to put it, the person whose idea it is, when they're also the person who makes it, it's more special. And so we talk to business owners who have the idea for their company of which they are the owner, and they make the app, and then they give the app to their customer. And there's this extra level of passion and creativity and investment that you necessarily lose in translation and communication when you outsource your idea to someone with the technical knowledge to make your software for you. You hire programmers. They're not going to care as much as you care usually. It's not their dream, it's their job. And so yeah, that's been a very special thing that we noticed that was different from when we worked on developer tools for technical software developers, because when we would interact with the software developer, they were always using our product at their job, almost always. Sometimes nights and weekends they would use it, but usually they were using our product to build software for someone else. And for the first time at Glide, I'm building a developer tool where the developers are the person who's like most invested in what they're making. And it's very compelling to talk to them.
One thing that is really, really interesting about Glide is how easy it is to create the app at the end. So something that caught my attention when I saw Glide for the first time is what these guys made, because it's incredibly easy. I came from a technical background, so for me it was like it's like a wizard, it's a magician. Yeah, I say, take this spreadsheet and voila, and in 5 minutes you have something running with a great design, because the design is really good. And right now what I see is exactly what you were telling. It's the difficulty that people is starting to have dealing with data, because the spreadsheet is good, yeah, but organizing data in spreadsheets is something that it's not as easy as it could be done, yeah. So you have to put some efforts to design it correctly. At the end, you need to take the data and do other configurations inside the tool. How do you look forward for this? Because in terms of the no-code area or no-code space, where, of course, Glide is into it, I think that Glide is in a very special situation. It's the easier tool for me. It's the first move when you want to show what is possible in terms of no coding. Try it with Glide, because in 5 minutes you can be amazed to the things that you just created without creating that at the end. So how do you look for the future of this space of the no-code, of Glide, and how Glide is into this space at the end?
Yeah, so one thing that we have to try to make more clear is that Glide is not an automatic platform. And a little bit to my dismay, as Glide adds features, what we discover is there's room for differentiation in people's ability to use Glide. There's experts and there's beginners now. And when I first saw that people were getting so specialized in Glide that other people were hiring them, I was very alarmed. And I said, perhaps this is a sign that our software is too hard to use, because we have specialists now. And we're trying to make this tool that's not for specialists, it's just for anyone. So that's one thing that we're grappling with a little bit, is just to get to your point about structuring data. Glide is not a no thought tool. It's no code, but like you still need to think and be creative and plan. And some people show up and they say, they'll join our forum and they say, what should I build and how do I make money with it? Like that's all they have. They're like, I want to make money with this. And I'm not saying that's bad. But Glide is not that type of tool that will just propose a solution and a problem to you. You have to bring the problem and you have to think about it pretty carefully still. So yeah, one thing we're working on is high level configuration of your data, configuring data types, relations, calculations. This is becoming kind of a pervasive pattern. I've even started calling it an Airtable after Airtable. Like I say, Glide has an Airtable in it, or I'm sort of saying that sort of half jokingly. But I see new tools every week that have a table of data with relations and formula columns. It's very interesting how that's being adopted as kind of a standard pattern, which I think is good. I think that people like thinking about their data in this way, and it helps people sort of create custom configurations on data in different tools. So yeah, like all those other tools, we just continue to develop in that direction. For example, one feature that Glide doesn't have yet that most of these tools that I alluded to have grouping ability. So you can say, group all of my employees by their office location. Glide doesn't do that as a first-class feature yet. You can do it with the spreadsheet, but so that's something we're designing. Like, how do we put this standard feature? We're in that place. We're playing catch up. We're not innovating. We're just still implementing some standard features that you would expect to have. But on the innovation side, we have some pretty far out prototypes of programming with data. What we think the far future of Glide could be like. Because our goal, we want Glide someday to be synonymous with software development. We want most software to be made with Glide. We don't view Glide as a limited mobile app builder. That's sort of how it started, but we want to create this very expansive, data-driven programming environment where you even might make software that doesn't have a user interface, maybe it's back-end software, automations or something. So what will be key to achieving that is this data-driven environment where you can build these relations and calculations and connections and data types in a way that's very sort of clear, easy to follow, easy to collaborate with others. That's sort of like one of the central design challenges. I think the two central design challenges are sort of the data-driven programming environment and the design system, the design programming environment, the design system for the software itself. What are the components and how do they relate to each other? How do you lay out your software visually for people to interact with it is the other sort of side of our design challenge coin.
One thing that I noticed today is that a lot of the stuff that you mentioned as being like a standard feature, they're not as standard in the no-code space because a lot of the tools are very young. So even things that you would consider to be like something that's standard, they don't have yet because they haven't reached that point yet.
Yeah.
And that's where I see an interesting divide with low-code tools, because the tools that are generally referred to as low-code, they've been around for a lot longer.
Yeah.
And they kind of targeted the corporate developer in general. They've always had this sort of a not so cool vibe to them. Mm-hmm. People would look at them and say, well, that's not really software development. But then it was designed for software developers. You couldn't really use them without being a software developer.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of, as you mentioned earlier, like in this no man's land, because it's not really for the non-technical person. And it's not really for what software developers perceive that they should be using. But they do have this, most of them, I believe, today have this data-driven approach where you kind of model your data. And then I don't remember seeing this first of OutSystems. You kind of model your data, and then you kind of drag the data onto your canvas, and it kind of generates all the interface that you're going to need to build your application. Of course, you can customize that later if you want to, but what it gives you is already a kind of a working application. And I kind of gone through all this description kind of to ask if this is how you see the future for Glide and other no-code tools going forward, where you kind of really model your data first, and then from that you give people kind of a running start on how to go about building their application.
Yeah. I think that's our approach, and start with the data and then build interfaces and automations on top of it. Maybe you'll build a mobile app, maybe you build a customer portal, maybe you build an internal admin dashboard, maybe you'll build some sort of email notification mechanism that's on a timer, that's evaluating data and then dispatching emails or something that's sort of like a non-visual app. But it will all sort of coalesce or at least connect to a shared view of data. I think we're taking that same approach, and also for the fact that the data pre-exists, that you already have the data that you want your application to be about. You just don't have your app yet. So you start with the data because it's there, like it's in your spreadsheet, and then you want to create this new artifact that uses the data and contributes to it. But I mean, to your point about these tools not being cool, that was like a big head scratcher for me when we started this. I was like, it's such a good idea to make tools like this, to make it easier for people to make software. Like, why hasn't anyone made a good one yet? Like, why isn't there one that we like to use? And like, they all sort of like, they get the job done, maybe your company uses it, but you're not saying like, my favorite, oh, what's your favorite software? Oh, mine's OutSystems. Like, no one says that. And one of my ambitions for Glide is, I mean, this is a big ambition, but I want Glide to be a lot of people's favorite software. I want them to say like, I love using it, and they would list reasons, and they're so productive, and they make this amazing software that people in their companies love. I think the bar should be that high, and it's strange these tools have never met it. I think they're so complex and they're very hard to design. Low code is also, it's kind of like an escape hatch. You know, it's very difficult to, we use that escape hatch in Glide actually. So when we designed our mathematics or our math column for doing calculations, at first we were like, okay, let's design the no code math column that makes it impossible to have a syntax error. And it was this tree of expressions, and it was nested, and it was all GUI based. And we said, this is terrible. Let's just use arithmetic expressions that everyone knows, and we'll do this like variable substitution trick. And so like that's the syntax. You can make a syntax error in Glide. So we gave a little bit there. In general, we're resisting just saying, oh, you have a formula column, and here's the reference of the 1,000 formulas that go there. We're trying to do this higher level ideas. And we're also trying to calculate across richer data types. So we have a computed column that produces images, for example. And, you know, someday we'll have a computed column that runs asynchronous formulas. I guess formulas are asynchronous in Excel as well, but like maybe takes an image as input and produces the text that's in the image as output. And that would be very strange to implement in a formula language. So yeah, I expect Glide will have products someday that are low code. But yeah, we're trying to be pretty disciplined about pulling off some design feats before we sort of pull the ripcord and just say, okay, here's, you know, just do formulas.
I think, David, that you guys are in a very good path to achieve your dream, because the penetration of Glide is all around the world. Yeah, I can see me and Mauricio, we are based in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil right now. And in Brazil, you guys have a strong community here. But you guys have a strong community in the Spanish world, in the Indian world, with the Europeans. So yeah. Can you give us some numbers in terms of, are you guys in all the countries of the world? What is the most important community right now in terms of growing fast. If you can give us, maybe not, of course, not strategic numbers that you have, but
sure.
things that you can open us in terms of how strong is the Glide community right now. Because in my point of view, you are the guys penetrating faster the world in terms of no code.
Yeah. I don't know if we're in every country. We're on the internet. So if you have internet in your country, you could probably use Glide, and maybe someone's built an app there with it. And yeah, that was another part of our strategy, was like, no one uses OutSystems after 5 p.m. So our friends at OutSystems, sorry we've picked you as the example of like the enterprise low code tool. You guys do great work. I've used your tool. It's very impressive. I don't mean to poke fun at you. I'm sorry. But in general, these enterprise low code, no code tools for work, you use them at work, but you don't use them on your weekends. And programmers program on the weekend and at night. Like, you love programming, you do it outside of work. So I said to Mark, my CTO, when he was like, he's like, maybe we should build an app builder. At first I said, no, they're all so bad. I don't want to make something bad. And I said to him, I was like, okay, if we do it, it has to be really good. And he said, oh, that goes without saying. Of course it has to be good. So we wanted Glide to be this thing that you would use by choice. And we wanted it to be free and easy to access, and something you would want to share and collaborate with other people, because that's how it should be. So we're delighted to see that people are just picking it up everywhere. But we're not close to 1 billion new software developers, which is our grand mission. So please share Glide with everyone you know.
Okay.
Just so we can close on I guess on a positive note. We've seen people creating amazing stuff with Glide, and we've seen people that want to create things which are, well, they would be even more amazing if they were the kind of thing that Glide has been designed for right now. Like, you can't create any kind of software in Glide, but that is something which I find kind of mesmerizing when you look at the discussions going on, is that you see that people feel so empowered that they want to create stuff that's way more complex than what can be achieved today.
Yeah. But
which I understand meets with the objectives that you guys have. So on I guess a positive future-looking note, how do you envision going forward in the next few years, when a tool such as Glide will be ready to create progressively more, I guess you could say larger scope software, or more mission critical software? Not really medical equipment kind of, but business mission critical.
I mean, there are a lot of aspects to making a mission critical app builder. There's sort of like the security and compliance. There's sort of the QA inside of Glide in order to sort of guarantee low level of error. I guess it's also us understanding much more of what is required in these specific circumstances. But the general way we make progress on increasing the power of Glide is we look at the workarounds that everyone's doing. That's one of the valuable parts of our community, is people say, well, let me take one more step back. One thing we were so excited about, we showed early versions of Glide to spreadsheet users. And they said, oh, can I do X, Y, Z? And we said, oh, well, not really, but you can kind of do it if you do these like 7 weird steps. And they were like, great. Spreadsheet users, like, they tinker and they work around. And we were like, this is a really good set of early customers to have, people who are so flexible and who take pride in their ability to circumvent the limitation. And what we learned from them, we look in our community, like, what is the workaround that's like really popular this week? Oh, people are using this image generation service to generate a specific type of placeholder image. How could we bring that into the product in a first-class way? We're step by step, we're doing this. So one thing we're releasing today in sort of a private test mode is native email notifications inside of Glide. So you can say, in this circumstance, send an email. Again, every other tool like Glide can do this. So it was kind of obvious that we had to do it, but we saw people saying, okay, well, I'm setting up a Zapier Zap that's triggered by a Google Sheet add row, and then I'm going to send an email through this other service. And people start tying all these things together. And we said, oh, it's too messy, and it's very, very common, and they're doing it in a very painful way. Let's simplify this and bring it into Glide. And I really think this sort of very methodical approach to looking at the common cases and trying to design a simple version within Glide for that functionality that will just add up over time to make Glide a tool that can solve hard problems, and it does it in a very considered way. I think there are ways you can sort of grow, you can take a huge leap in the power of a tool. And you do that by kind of leaning on the old school programming mainstays of putting custom code in and connecting to much more complex external systems that sort of all the complexity goes into them. And we just want to create something so much larger than any of these things that we have to be more careful and do a lot more design.
Well, David, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us and for sharing all your thoughts and some of the history behind the company. Thanks again. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. For you too.
Take care. Stay healthy.
You too.